how much should you have in your 401 by now? It's one of the most searched retirement questions. Maybe you're 30 and wondering if you're behind. Maybe you're 45 and trying to figure out whether retirement still feels realistic. Or maybe you're approaching retirement and asking a different question altogether. Have I actually saved enough? Every year, new data is published showing the average and median 401 balances for different age groups. Those numbers get shared across news articles, social media, and personal finance websites. People immediately compare themselves to the averages. If they're above average, they feel relieved. If they're below average, they start to worry. But here's the problem. The average balance often tells only part of the story. In some cases, it can even create the wrong conclusion. Today, we're going to look at the latest 2026 401 balance data by age. More importantly, we'll explain what those numbers actually mean. Because knowing the average is useful. Understanding how to use that information is far more valuable. Let's imagine two coworkers. We'll call them Alex and Ben. They're both 35 years old. Both have a 401. Both recently looked up the average retirement balance for their age. Alex discovers he's slightly above the national average. He immediately feels confident. I'm doing better than most people. Ben finds out he's slightly below the average. He becomes discouraged. I must be behind. At first, both reactions seem reasonable. But both investors are making the same mistake. They're assuming the average balance tells the whole story. It doesn't. Retirement readiness depends on much more than one account balance. Your income, your savings rate, your employer match, how long you've been investing, whether you changed jobs, whether you've ever cashed out a retirement account, even the age you plan to retire. All of those factors matter. That's why today's goal isn't simply comparing numbers. It's understanding what those numbers can and cannot tell us. Before we look at each age group, there's one important concept everyone should understand. The difference between an average and a median. Suppose 10 people each have $20,000 in their retirement account. The average balance is $20,000. The median balance is also $20,000. Simple. Now imagine one person suddenly has $2 million. The other 9 investors still have around $20,000. The average immediately jumps much higher. But the typical investor hasn't changed at all. That's exactly why retirement reports usually publish both numbers. The average is influenced by relatively large account balances. The median represents the middle participant. Half of investors have more. Half have less. For understanding what a typical saver has accumulated, the median is often the more useful benchmark. That doesn't mean the average is wrong. It simply answers a different question. Understanding this difference helps explain why many retirement reports show averages that are dramatically higher than their corresponding medians. It's also why comparing yourself with one headline number can sometimes create unnecessary confidence or unnecessary anxiety. That's why I wouldn't ask, "Am I above average?" I'd ask a better question. Am I consistently making progress? Because retirement isn't a competition against everyone else. It's a long-term plan built around your own financial goals. With that in mind, let's start with the youngest investors. If you're just beginning your career, your account balance probably isn't very large. And that's perfectly normal. At this stage, the most valuable asset isn't the money already invested. It's time. Every contribution has decades to potentially grow before retirement. That's why the most important decision early in your career usually isn't finding the perfect investment. It's simply getting started. Behavioral research has consistently shown that automatic enrollment dramatically increases retirement plan participation. When saving happens automatically, people are generally much more likely to stay invested over long periods. The same principle applies to automatic contribution increases. Small increases made consistently over many years may have a much larger impact than trying to dramatically increase savings later in life. If your employer offers a matching contribution, understanding how that match works should be one of your first priorities. Many financial planners consider capturing the full employer match one of the highest return financial decisions available because it's part of your overall compensation. Just as important, understand what your contributions are actually invested in. Many workplace retirement plans offer several investment options. Choosing investments that match your long-term goals and risk tolerance matters just as much as making contributions in the first place. Because building retirement wealth isn't just about saving money. It's about giving those savings enough time to work. Now let's move into the next stage. This is often the decade when careers begin accelerating. Income starts growing. Many people receive their first meaningful promotions. But life also becomes more expensive. You may be paying rent or a mortgage, starting a family, paying off student loans, or balancing several financial goals at once. That's why comparing your retirement balance with someone else's can become even more misleading. Two people of the same age may have completely different financial situations. One person may have been contributing since age 22. Another may have only recently become eligible for a workplace retirement plan. Someone working for an employer with a generous matching program may build savings much faster than someone without one. The important question isn't whether your balance matches the national average. It's whether your savings habits are improving as your income grows. One of the most effective ways to do that is increasing your contribution rate whenever you receive a raise. Instead of allowing every salary increase to become higher spending, consider directing part of each raise toward retirement savings. Many employer plans even allow automatic contribution increases. That removes the need to make the same decision every year. Small increases made consistently can have a surprisingly large impact over several decades. Another important consideration during this stage is what happens when changing jobs. Changing employers has become much more common than it was decades ago. But every job change creates an important retirement decision. Some people leave their old 401 behind. Others roll it into another qualified retirement account. Some choose to cash it out. Historically, cashing out retirement accounts early has been one of the biggest leaks in long-term retirement savings. Depending on age and circumstances, early withdrawals may trigger taxes, possible penalties, and the permanent loss of future compound growth. Money withdrawn today no longer has decades to remain invested. That's why many financial professionals recommend carefully evaluating rollover options before taking cash distributions. Another decision that often appears during this stage is choosing between traditional and Roth 401 contributions if both are available. A traditional 401 generally provides a tax deduction today, while qualified Roth withdrawals are generally tax-free in retirement. Neither option is universally better. The appropriate choice depends on factors such as your current tax bracket, expected future tax situation, and overall retirement plan. Some investors even choose to diversify between both account types. The key takeaway is simple. During your 20s and early 30s, the balance itself matters far less than the habits you're building. Those habits often determine how the next several decades unfold. For many people, this decade becomes a turning point. Your portfolio is usually much larger than it was 10 years ago. Compounding begins making a more noticeable contribution. At the same time, retirement starts feeling less like a distant idea and more like a real financial goal. This is also when many families experience their highest financial demands. Mortgage payments, childcare, education expenses, supporting aging parents, career changes. It's easy for retirement savings to compete with every other priority. That's exactly why reviewing your progress becomes so valuable. Several financial institutions publish retirement savings milestones based on age and salary. For example, Fidelity suggests having approximately 3 times your annual salary saved by age 40. It's important to remember that these are planning guidelines, not guarantees. They assume certain savings rates, retirement ages, and spending patterns that may not apply equally to everyone. Still, they can serve as a useful checkpoint. If you're behind your own retirement goal, this decade often offers one of your best opportunities to adjust course. Increasing your savings rate by even a few percentage points while you still have 20 or more years before retirement may have a much greater impact than trying to save aggressively during the final few years of your career. At the same time, avoid viewing your retirement account as a source of emergency spending. Some workplace plans allow participants to borrow against their 401. While loans may appear convenient, they also carry meaningful risks. If repayment requirements aren't met, particularly after leaving an employer, the remaining balance may become a taxable distribution under ERS rules. That's why many financial planners encourage building emergency savings outside retirement accounts whenever possible. By your 40s, the conversation should gradually shift from simply growing your account to understanding whether your overall retirement plan is moving in the right direction. And as you'll see next, the decisions made during your 50s often have an even greater influence on retirement readiness than many people realize. By the time many investors reach their late 40s or early 50s, retirement no longer feels like a distant event. It's something that can be measured in years instead of decades. Your portfolio has likely benefited from many years of contributions. Compounding is becoming more noticeable. And for many households, income is approaching its peak. This combination creates an important opportunity. Every additional dollar invested during this decade still has time to grow, but the number of remaining working years is becoming smaller. That makes consistency especially valuable. Many financial planning guidelines suggest using this stage to compare your progress against your long-term retirement goals rather than against national averages. For example, Fidelity's planning framework suggests that many workers aim to have approximately 6 times their annual salary saved by age 50 and around 7 times by age 55. These are planning benchmarks, not guarantees, and individual circumstances may differ significantly. If your savings are below your own target, this doesn't necessarily mean retirement is out of reach. It simply means now is a good time to review your plan. Perhaps increasing your contribution rate is possible. Perhaps a recent raise can be directed toward retirement instead of higher spending. Or perhaps delaying retirement by a year or two could meaningfully improve the long-term outlook. The important point is that you still have choices. This is also the age when catch-up contributions become available for many retirement plans. Current ERS rules allow eligible workers age 50 and older to contribute additional money beyond the standard annual 401 contribution limit. For many investors, these additional contributions provide one final opportunity to accelerate retirement savings before leaving the workforce. But remember, contribution limits and tax rules change over time. Always verify the current limits for the year you're contributing. As retirement approaches, the conversation changes again. The question is no longer, how much have I saved? It's, how will this money support the rest of my life? Those aren't the same question. Many people focus entirely on reaching a certain portfolio balance. In reality, retirement planning usually starts with spending. How much will you actually need each year? Will your mortgage still exist? Will healthcare costs increase? Will you travel more or less? Those answers shape the retirement plan far more than one average account balance. Another important piece of the puzzle is guaranteed income. For many Americans, that may include Social Security. Some retirees may also receive pension income. Others may have income from taxable investments or other assets. The larger your reliable income sources, the less pressure your investment portfolio may need to carry. This is also the stage where many investors begin thinking about withdrawal strategies. One widely known guideline is the 4% rule. It originated from William Bengen's research and was later supported by the Trinity study under many historical market conditions. It's important to remember that it's a planning guideline based on historical data, not a guarantee of future results. Modern retirement planning often uses more flexible withdrawal approaches that adjust spending as markets change. Sequence of returns risk also becomes much more important during this period. Poor market performance during the first years of retirement can have a greater impact than experiencing the same decline much later. That's one reason many retirees review their asset allocation and overall risk as retirement approaches. Exactly how much risk is appropriate depends on individual circumstances, spending flexibility, other income sources, and personal comfort with market volatility. Many people imagine retirement as the finish line. In reality, it's simply the beginning of a different financial stage. Instead of accumulating wealth, you're gradually using it. That requires a different mindset. A withdrawal plan becomes just as important as a savings plan once was. Traditional retirement accounts are also subject to required minimum distribution rules under current U.S. law beginning at age 73. These required withdrawals don't necessarily determine how much you should spend. They determine the minimum amount that generally must be withdrawn under current tax rules. For many retirees, tax planning becomes increasingly important during this stage. Another common misconception is that retirement means eliminating all investment risk. While reducing risk may be appropriate for some investors, moving entirely into cash also creates another challenge. Inflation gradually reduces purchasing power over long retirement periods. Many retirees therefore maintain at least some exposure to long-term growth assets, depending on their financial situation and risk tolerance. So what should you take away from all these numbers? Don't use the average balance as a report card. Use it as a reference point. Your retirement readiness depends on much more than one account. It depends on consistent saving, smart investment decisions, taxes, spending, employer benefits, Social Security, and the financial habits you've built over many years. If there's one lesson I hope you remember, it's this: the goal isn't to beat the average. The goal is to build a retirement plan that works for your life. Because retirement isn't won by reaching someone else's number. It's built through consistent decisions, repeated over decades, while giving time and compounding the opportunity to do what they have historically done best. Thanks for watching.